All right, so one team I was paying close attention to this offseason were the Dallas Mavericks. And the reason being, a lot of people kind of think that last year was their last opportunity, their first and only opportunity to make an NBA Finals appearance and win an NBA championship with this Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic duo. I don't agree with that, but I can see why some people say that. If we look at the theme over the last couple of years with the league, the teams that are making the NBA Finals and winning championships, they're not repeating that success. Only two consistent teams when it comes to making these really deep playoff runs have been the Boston Celtics and the Miami Heat, right? We've seen them both make multiple finals appearances since 2020. But if we look at like the 2021 NBA Finals, we had the Bucks and the Suns. None of them have been able to repeat that success and get back to the NBA Finals. 2022, the Golden State Warriors win a championship, and they have gotten progressively worse since then. And if we look at even 2020 with the Lakers, they have not gotten anywhere near that level of success. And another team you can kind of look at it where things have almost gotten worse since then. And the Nuggets and the Heat just last season, they both make the finals and they both end up losing this particular season or last season before they reach the conference finals. So that's the theme throughout the course of the league. And I can understand why people would think the Mavericks have that same fate headed towards them. But I think there are some moves that they can make this offseason to get better and potentially get back at that level. And I don't think anybody right now in the Western Conference has gotten that much better, right? No one's made major additions to their roster to like say they're definitively the team to beat out in the West. The Wolves, the Warriors, the Lakers, the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Suns, none of those teams made huge, significant changes to their roster for me to be like, yep, they're going to override Dallas this coming season. There may be some newer teams that enter the mix, like the Rockets. Maybe the Kings are better than what they were last season, but I don't think the West has shifted that much as far as the favorites, right? I think the West is generally almost looking the same as it was last season. And there have been some roster shakeups, but like I said, I don't think anybody has definitively gotten better than Dallas. So I think the biggest focuses for the Mavericks this offseason is, for one, adding some guys to their offense who can limit the stagnation that they kind of suffered from in the finals. We saw it time and time again. Luka and Kyrie would kind of fall into these possessions where nothing's going on. Guys are just standing around and they're settling for like these difficult contested shots. And they can make them, but relying on those shots for too long in a final series is not going to be sustainable. So can they bring in guys who can add some variation to their offense and also personnel changes so they can get better out there when it comes to guarding on the perimeter? One of the biggest reasons they lost in that series against the Celtics is because Boston did a good job at hunting mismatches. By hunting, I mean Luka. They did not do a good job at all of hiding Luka, and also Luka didn't do a good job of guarding on the ball. And from there, Celtics guys were able to get into the paint and open up the offense, and they were able to get these really efficient looks from downtown. That's why they were so efficient from that particular range. The Celtics were really just able to kind of play the same game they played the entire season, where they were just simply the best three-point shooting team in the NBA while shooting a high volume of threes. So those were the two biggest focuses. Who are you going to add so they can end up having less stagnation in their offense? And also, what personnel changes did you make to get better on the perimeter from a defensive standpoint? So we know their biggest move was bringing in Klay Thompson. Klay did have a down year. I'm still holding out a lot of hope that he can return to like that 20 point per game Klay Thompson that we've known him to be over the course of time. I mean, he's really 1 year removed from averaging 20 points per game. He averaged 21.9 on really efficient three-point shooting the season before last season. So there is hope that Klay can return to that level. He can also do a little bit of shot creating, right? That's something he's gotten better at over the last couple of years, and something he's done a lot more after his ACL injury. There's also this, and here's where he adds a different level of variation to that Mavericks offense. Klay is a really good movement shooter. Last season, Dallas did not have a lot of good movement shooters. Guys would just kind of be camping out there on the wings, waiting to get a pass from Luka or Kyrie. Klay can move well off the ball and knock down shots off of that movement. So there are going to be a lot more off-ball actions run for Klay. That adds a little bit more variation within their offense and can limit that stagnation and, in effect, can open up other opportunities. That's one thing Klay does bring to the table. He's a major shooting threat. We know that, but his movement alone can open up a ton within that Dallas offense that I just don't think they had last season. Like I said, they didn't have a lot of great movement shooters. Klay is just simply one of the greatest movement shooters of all time. So we look at Klay as just another all-star addition to the roster or all-star caliber addition to the roster. But like I said, that movement, the way in which he can operate, can open up a lot with that Dallas defense. My hope and prayer is that Jason Kidd doesn't just have him sitting out there in the corner waiting to get a pass. I hope that Jason Kidd does optimize Klay's ability to move around well off the ball that he was doing a lot in Golden State. So that's one thing Klay can give them on the offensive end, along with this just regular stationary catch and shoot shooting, is that movement. They also made a good addition with Naji Marshall from the Pelicans. So Naji Marshall, really efficient three-point shooter, nearly knocked down 39% of his threes last season. Can he repeat that success? That's a question, but we'll see. But from last season, he put up elite level three-point shooting numbers. But one thing he also brings that I don't think Derrick Jones Jr. did an amazing job at, he was okay, but Naji Marshall is really, really good off the dribble. So now we're talking about attacking closeouts, right? He had a very high conversion rate off the dribble. I think he was like 50% from his conversion rate standpoint off the dribble, and he knocked down nearly 50% of his floaters. He is a really good finisher off of like attacking closeouts and driving to the rim. There were times where like guys would kind of get a catch last season for Dallas, and if they weren't open, if somebody closed out on them, they would kind of just hold it and pass it back up top and let Luka or Kyrie do whatever the hell they want. Naji Marshall can add a level of attacking the rim off of those closeouts and everything, which puts a lot of pressure on the defense and can open up a lot of different opportunities. That's something Boston has. We know they have great catch and shoot shooters, but they have guys who can attack those closeouts. And when you can get that happening, you can also have the ball moving side to side, and that punishes the defense and can open up really efficient looks. That's what Naji Marshall can bring to the table. And he's a really relatively smaller pickup. He's more of a marginal pickup on this roster. He's not a big name guy at all, but those smaller pickups can mean a lot. I was kind of having this debate with some people in the comment section on a video I made a couple of days ago about the Bucks. They picked up Gary Trent. A lot of people don't think it's a difference maker because he's not like this big name player or whatever the case may be, and they don't think he could be the difference between them being a really good team and just an okay team like they were last season. But those smaller moves, if they make sense for your offense or defense, can make that level of a difference. And I think Naji Marshall can be a huge difference maker within that Mavericks offensive system. I'm not saying he's going to be like a 15-point per game guy. I'm not saying he's going to be like an all-star, but his ability to attack can do a lot and open up opportunities for this Mavericks offense. So those two guys, Klay and Naji Marshall, can add some different dimensions to that Dallas Mavericks offense. So now let's talk about their defense. And as I mentioned earlier, that's a major point of concern for them this particular season. They picked up Klay, Naji Marshall, but they also got Quentin Grimes. So those three guys are three really good 3-and-D threats. Naji Marshall is a really good, solid at worst defender. Quentin Grimes is a really good physical point of attack defender who can also knock down shots from range. So kind of like Naji Marshall can be that plug and play type of guy. But I think the most value he brings to Dallas will be his defense. Now there's this question about Klay Thompson. What version of Klay do you get on defense, right? Klay at his best in his prime years was an elite level defensive player. In 2019, he made his first All-NBA team. Last year was one of his worst from a defensive standpoint. I think it actually was his worst if we're looking at defensive rating. So your question is, can Klay return to being an all-world level defensive player that he was at one point? I think he can, with a little bit of a lesser role within this Mavericks offense, playing behind both Luka and Kyrie. I think this means he can return to playing at that higher level on defensive end. And also, he's more motivated now. If you look at Klay and you're hearing him talk, he seems a lot more motivated. He seems a lot more locked in. And I think that's going to translate well over to his defense. So if that's true, if Klay does return to that level, they got three really good 3-and-D guys who can guard wings. And two of those guys, maybe three, can be really good at guarding at the point of attack. right? So overall, they had a focus of adding even more 3-and-D threats with Marshall, Grimes, and Thompson, and they got those three guys, and I think they addressed some significant issues within their offense and their defense. As I said, your question now is, does Jason Kidd make the right decisions with these additions to make this Mavericks offense much less stagnant? Again, I think that stopped them over the years. I think that's presented a major wall with them over the years. Yes, they're talented, but stagnation can ruin you. We saw that also happen with the Celtics. What they ended up doing was making moves at the margins, right? And also some big moves like Drew Holiday. Those guys were good at doing certain things that limited the stagnation within the Celtics offense and opened them up, and that's why they were able to win a championship. That could be the same thing here in Dallas. So again, these are smaller moves outside of Klay Thompson. These are marginal moves, but they could be major difference makers as this team is trying to return to a championship level. So shout out to the Mavericks front office. Again, outside of Klay, these are good, smaller, lesser talked about moves, but they do address some specific niche issues that they have. And the hope is that those three guys can bring it on the defensive end, especially Klay. But I like what they've done, and I really like their chances out in the Western Conference. Again, I don't think anybody in the West right now has done enough to definitively say we are the team to beat right now in the Western Conference. Some teams have gotten worse. The Nuggets lost KCP. That is a big-time loss. He is one of the best 3-and-D guys in the entire league and was a starter. They lost him. The Clippers lost Paul George. So some teams that were already in the mix got a little bit worse. So like I said, I think the Mavericks have done a solid job at addressing some concerns and issues, and I think they're still in the mix to get back to the NBA Finals and be the best team in the Western Conference.